As you start to learn more and more CSS, I think it's helpful to at least have an idea of how the CSS code looks. I won't spend a lot of time in Code View, and I won't subject you to this for very long, but I just want to point out a couple of things that require looking at the code. Here in the CSS Styles panel, you see that the new styles we just created for these links are in an internal style sheet, and that the other styles are in an external style sheet. Well, internal style sheets, you should know, are actually stored at the top of an HTML document. So I'm going to use split view to show you how this looks. If I scroll up to the top of the page, I can click somewhere up here just to move higher in the code, and then just move up a little more. And I'm actually going to open this up a little bit so we can see better. CSS code is quite different from HTML code. You can tell HTML tags like this title tag because they always have an open and a close tag. In contrast, you can immediately identify CSS styles because they look more like this. The definition is enclosed within these curly brackets, and although they don't have to be stacked one after another, this is generally how they are stored in an internal style sheet in Dreamweaver. Now, if you want to see what an external style sheet looks like, you can click on Galapagos and see here we have an external style sheet. And this contains all of the other styles that are available to this page. It also includes some things like comments. These are just instructions designed to give additional information about the styles. So in the source code, we see the internal style sheet at the top of the page. In the external style sheet, we see all of the other styles. Now there's one other thing I want you to see. In the style sheet itself and in the CSS styles panel, you see the name of styles. So because this header style is an ID style, it has the pound sign. Because this highlight style is a class style, you're catching on, it has the dot. Because these are tag styles, they look exactly like the HTML tags. However, when those tags are applied to the content in the page itself, so if, for example, you've already applied a style like the main content style to a div, it's going to look different in the code than it does in the CSS styles panel or in the style sheet itself. So let me switch back over to source code and let me show you what that div tag looks like when it's applied to a div. Because it can be a little confusing when you first start to look at the code and you say, wait a minute, I thought ID style started with a pound sign. Well, ID style names do start with a pound sign, but only in the CSS style sheet. In the HTML code itself, that ID is identified by ID equals instead of by the pound sign. Similarly, if you use a class style, you won't see the dot. So here you see class float right, aligning this image to the right, and again, you don't see the dot that you would see over here. Over here in the float right style, you've got dot float right, because that's a class style name. But in the code, it's simply going to be class equals and then the name. So don't let it confuse you that the names are slightly different when you actually look at the HTML code. Now that you've seen a little more of that code, aren't you glad Dreamweaver creates it all for you? Wait till you see what Dreamweaver does when it comes to entire CSS layouts that Dreamweaver's already given you a head start with. We'll work on one of those in the next chapter.